Hello and welcome. Tonight, Vice President Kashim Shettima heads to China and the United States for 2 international engagements to woo investors and highlight reforms in the country's agri-food sector. Curtains draw on the 2023 IMF World Bank annual meetings in Morocco, with World Bank leaders already agreeing on the need for countries to look inwards and breaking trade barriers. And Benue state government gives a 30-day ultimatum to all artisans and illegal miners to regularize their activities with proof of mining license. And the United Nations says that Gaza is being pushed to abyss as Israel prepares for ground offensive amid soaring humanitarian crisis. The Vice President Kashim Shettima has departed Abuja, the nation's capital, for Beijing in China to represent President Bola Tinubu at the Third Belt and Road Initiative Forum, holding between October the 16th and the 18th. He's expected to join other world leaders across all continents to deliberate on issues of global interest, with the theme High-Quality Belt and Road Cooperation, Together for Common Development and Prosperity. Senator Shettima is expected to woo investors for Nigeria's developmental projects. The Vice President will also hold bilateral meetings with some of the world leaders from the 130 countries participating to promote the country's trade and investment opportunities. Senator Shettima, who leads the delegation of top government officials to the forum, will later depart China for the United States as keynote speaker at the AFBD and World Food Prize event, which is starting on October the 24th. And after 7 days of intense deliberations, the curtains have fallen on the 2023 IMF World Bank annual meetings in Marrakesh, Morocco. A series of conversations have culminated in a unanimous perspective that the world economy is already facing one of its worst downturn yet. While some of the solutions proffered by world leaders include the need for countries to look inwards and breaking the trade barriers. Our business correspondent, John Mekwa, who has been covering events there, captures the highlights of the meetings.
This is where we started it on Monday. Looks like a good place to close it. However, at this time, the crowd around and inside the campus has thinned out. But in the past 6 days, it's been a marathon of meetings.
Global economic issues have been given a lot of attention, from the economic outlook, which didn't give a lot of good news, but still offers hope.
With elevated debt levels, rising funding costs, slowing growth, and an increasing mismatch between the growing demands on the state and available fiscal resources. Higher long-term growth can be achieved through a careful sequence of reforms.
Nigeria got attention here too.
There's a downward revision for this year. Partly this is because of the demonetization, the high inflation, the shocks to agriculture and hydrocarbon output. That's coming on top of those external headwinds. I would also add that President Tinubu has moved quickly with important reforms, including ending the fuel subsidies and unifying the official exchange rate. We welcome these initial bold reforms because we see them as paving the way towards stronger and inclusive growth.
Also, an interest-free loan of $1.5 billion may be coming the way of Nigeria from the World Bank.
Not at all about attached with qualifying for a World Bank funding to help finance development. In this particular case, it's long been in the pipeline, and we're hoping that that funding will come through soon.
And then to the G24, being a voice to their members and seeking better packages and condition.
The world economic outlook is very uncertain, and many of our countries have been at the receiving end of very high interest rates, very high inflation, currency volatility, and because of all of that, they're facing quite a huge economic hardship. And so what we are calling for is that the IMF should ramp up its financing. The Poverty Reduction and Growth Trust, and also the Resilience and Sustainability Facility.
No doubt, the issue of debt cancellation is priority in the midst of huge debt burden on many emerging economies. For the World Bank President, Mr. Ejibanga, it's time for Africa to look inwards.
You cannot solve it for the continent as a whole, but you can solve it by starting by smaller regions in the continent, looking at how you can promote intra-regional trade in Africa.
A global trade debate was another interesting conversation here. The Director General of World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, brought up the term re-globalization.
Then, to build resilience, we need, yes, to deconcentrate and diversify those supply chains. And we are arguing that a good way to do it is not just to do it with your friends or those who are like you, but to spread your wings, because we also have something called climate change. And if you cluster too many things, you don't know what phenomenon is going to happen. So why don't we look at developing economies that have the right business environment, and I insist on that, and see if we can diversify some supply chains there. So we build resilience. Some of these have been left out during the first wave of globalization. So we can build resilience whilst being inclusive. And we're calling that re-globalization.
Alongside the serious business, Marrakesh was exposed to a lot of foreigners who would otherwise have not visited. Participants got to know the culture and the city.
Not enough time to tell you all that happened in Marrakesh in the last 1 week, but these are the high points we can bring to you. And so, from here, the city that has been called a luxurious city, I'm going back home to Nigeria. Ini John Mekwa reporting for Channels Television News.
Former Minister of Education and founder of Fix Politics, Mrs. Obi Ezekwesili, is of the opinion that before embarking on another fuel subsidy probe, the National Assembly must tell Nigerians what actions we're taking on the findings from the previous probes. Her position is shared by many who expressed concern that perpetrators of subsidy fraud are roaming free, while Nigerians suffer the consequences of their actions. In this special report, National Assembly correspondent Terry Kumi takes a look at the investigations into the fuel subsidy carried out by the National Assembly so far.
The conversation of subsidy scam is far from over, especially considering that investigations have been held in the past, specifically by the National Assembly, with no tangible outcomes.
We presented a report.
It all began with the 7th Assembly in 2012, when the chairman of the committee which was investigating subsidy scam was roped into a bribery allegation scandal. Mr. Farouk Lawan was caught on camera receiving bribe from the then chairman of Fort Oil, Mr. Femi Otedola, and sentenced to 7 years in jail many years after. Since then, every assembly has carried out investigations into fuel subsidy payments and under-recovery. In 2017, the Senate mandated its Committee on Petroleum Downstream to commence investigations into allegations that the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited made subsidy claims amounting to about 5.1 trillion naira between 2006 and 2016. The immediate past Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, had put the daily payment for fuel subsidy at 18.39 billion naira, and that 1.774 trillion naira was paid to independent oil marketers as subsidy in 4 years. The former minister stated this during an investigative hearing of the ad hoc committee of the 9th House, which was investigating the petroleum subsidy regime from 2017 to 2021.
Average daily truck out will be 64.96 million liters per day. That's about 65 million liters per day, using an average exchange rate and open market rate of 448 naira and 20 kobo, and then a regulator pump price of 165 naira per liter. The total amount of subsidy per day is 18.397 billion naira per day.
The ad hoc committee laid its report on the 1st of June 2023 after 11 months, but the report was not made public. The motion which led to the investigation was moved by Honorable Sergius Ogun.
I am very positive when we can get the executive to do the needful That's the only way I think we can get out of the woods when it comes to fuel subsidy management in this country.
Within the period of subsidy,
Quite recently, following the adoption of a motion by Senator Patrick Chumba on the 11th of July 2023, the Senate constituted an ad hoc committee to investigate the fuel subsidy regime of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. The motion alleges that while the NNPCL between 2006 and 2015 claimed about 170 billion naira as under recovery, the same NNPCL within 13 months, January 2018 to January 2019, claimed a sum of 843.12 billion naira as under recovery. But there are concerns regarding the outcomes of the probes on fuel subsidy done by the National Assembly so far.
Why do they have to just pretend that there had not been probes that had findings on which they did not act? Before they do this next one, they should tell us what has happened in terms of actions that were supposed to be taken with that first one they did. Some of the ones that were the perpetrators of subsidy fraud are all over the place in the country. Some of them have been running for politics and being elected. What have they done? They should stop annoying us.
Mrs. Ezekwesili's statement receives a nod from the Deputy Chairman of the House Committee on Petroleum Upstream.
I believe with the Ninth Assembly and the 8th Assembly, they have done a great work. And they have so many resolutions in the report. There is need for us to harness all the reports that we have and implement.
With trillions of naira said to have been paid in petrol subsidies so far, and lack of data to ascertain the daily consumption of petrol in the country, perhaps the new administration comprising the legislature and executive would revisit reports of previous probes for necessary implementation, especially amid disturbing reports of a possible return of payment of petrol subsidy. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Over to Benue State now, where the state government has given a 30-day ultimatum to artisans and illegal miners to regularize their activities with proof of mining license. Governor Hyacinth Alia gave this directive at the meeting with traditional rulers led by the Tortiv, Professor James Ayatse, following the constitution of the State Task Force on Illegal Mining. The governor is holding the meeting to enlist the cooperation of royal fathers who are expected to supervise the task force.
Following the discovery of gold in commercial quantity in Kwande local government area in 2021, illegal mining activities associated with violent crimes have been on the rise. Unidentified foreign miners had opened the mines in Kwande, while those in Logo, Guma, as well as Ogbadibo local government areas have led to environmental hazards. To address these issues, Governor Hyacinth Alia set up a task force on illegal mining, wood logging and tax collection. Their primary duty is to check the abuse of mineral resources deposits in the state.
We called for a meeting and we have interacted and interfaced with them. We have also presented a template and blueprint for the mining sector in our dear state. We have all agreed to dialogue from time to time to chart the way forward in implementing what their own part, and the state too will also do their part.
Governor Alia meets with traditional rulers in the state under the leadership of the Tortiv, Professor James Ayatse, to enlist their support. After the meeting, the special advisor to the governor on Bureau of Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs gives insights on what was discussed at the meeting.
He advised them to help him so that we curb this menace. Most of the young people that are in our communities that are collecting illegal taxes belongs to these communities. And most of these chiefs are aware and they know these people. So he requested them to help him so that these young people can be identified and then placed appropriately so that they will have a livelihood instead of blocking roads where farmers and traders are put into a hardship.
Benue, like many other states, is pushing for mining regulations that will protect the environment and also earn its derivation from the sector.
In part 2, after the break, what are the implications of the CBN's decision to relax forex on 43 items? Our in-house analyst Babajide Ogunsowo has some answers. Please join us again. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television, Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Vice President Kashim Shettima heads to China and the United States for 2 international engagements to woo investors and highlight reforms in the country's agri-food sector. Curtains draw on the 2023 IMF World Bank annual meetings in Morocco, with world leaders agreeing on the need for countries to look inwards and breaking trade barriers. And Benue state government gives a 30-day ultimatum to all artisans and illegal miners to regularize their activities with proof of mining license. And the United Nations says that Gaza is being pushed to abyss as Israel prepares for ground offensive amid soaring humanitarian crisis. In July 2015, the Central Bank of Nigeria stopped providing foreign exchange for the importation of more than 40 items. Well, that has now changed. The new leadership of the CBN says it will intervene from time to time just to ensure that foreign exchange is available for the importation of items that had been restricted from the official market. Tonight, our focus is to find out how significant this new policy is from the CBN. Babajide Ogunsowo, founder of Leadership by Data, and Channels Television's data analyst, is here to share insights on this issue. Thank you very much, Babajide.
Good evening, Anne.
Good evening. I mean, the CBN is already taking a new stance from what we have seen on the ease of accessing foreign exchange policy for importation. But how important is this move at this time?
The move is important, and but before we go into this move, today is a very important day, and that's because exactly on this day, 8.5 decades ago, the great musician Fela Kuti was born. Tonight isn't just about the greatness of his melody and his music. Tonight is about, Anne, what will make you dance if I give you 1,000 naira or if I give you just $1? And for a lot of Nigerians, they will dance more if I give them $1. With respect to this policy, Anne, this policy initially started from June 2015. The CBN had its reasons why it said it was going to be restricting some imports from accessing currency at the official market. But that has changed. But a lot of investors still see this as a policy uncertainty, and they're asking what will be the next policy even after this. And I'll explain why. Let's take a look at what had happened and what the CBN was saying even 3 years after it made this policy. Policy came in 2015, and in 2018, the CBN made it clear that this policy had led to a lot of establishment of new industries. The CBN said its policy of restricting FX had led to the growth and employment benefits, using the CBN's words. Based on the same policy, had created phenomenal results. In summary terms, the same CBN had said its policies 3 years after were working. Now we have a new leadership of the CBN, and the leadership of the CBN is currently saying those policies did not work. And they are saying this new policy of allowing new businesses, or businesses to access the official market, will create employment and will create factories, even though this former CBN had said factories had been created. In summary, what we are saying is the CBN has to become the central bank of Nigeria and stop being the central bank of politics. Because what we've seen is a policy was introduced in 2015. 3 years after, 4 years after, the central bank said the policy was creating impact. Now, under a new leadership, the central bank is saying the policy did not create impact. And so going forward, the central bank has to go back to its core responsibilities of being the Central Bank of Nigeria and no longer the central bank of politics.
But what are the real reasons behind volatility, I mean, in the exchange rate, especially when we talk about the parallel market?
So clearly, going by the basic principles of economics, the returns on Naira investments are lower than the rate of inflation. So if you look at the returns on government bonds, on savings, people don't have the incentive to hold the Naira, and so they are looking for other currencies that have given them incentives. So the demand for the dollar has increased, and the supply for the dollars has not met the demand. That is what has happened traditionally. But beyond what has happened traditionally, Anne, the evidence also shows that even at the official markets, the foreign exchange has not been stable. And so investors are saying, if at the official market, going by history, the value of the Naira keeps depreciating at the official markets, then clearly it creates even more panic at the parallel market. So let's look at the history of what has gone on at the official market since when this policy was introduced within June, the last day of June and into the 1st of July. June 2015, the policy was introduced officially. The dollar was trading at 196 Naira. A year after, 282 Naira, 305 Naira. By 2021, at the official market, over 400 Naira, goes to 414 Naira in last year, and now 770 Naira. So the concern is, if the Naira-dollar exchange rates cannot get stable at the official window, then clearly it creates even more uncertainties at the parallel markets.
Another area of concern, Babajide, will be that is Nigeria's dollar reserves enough to meet the rising demand for dollar?
You know, Anne, the truth about the dollar reserves and the value of the Naira is actually a myth, and I'll explain that to you. Let's take a look at the dollar reserves versus our exchange rate, and it allows us to know if our focus should really be on the dollar reserves or on something else. Here's what I mean. Dollar reserves, October 2020, $42 billion, exchange rate 157 Naira. Even though we still had $42 billion reserves as at 2019, exchange rate 306 Naira. Same dollar reserves, 2 different periods, 2 different values. $42 billion 2012, 157 Naira. 7 years after, dollar reserves was able to hit $42 billion again, but exchange rate had depreciated to 306 Naira. Another example, October 2015, dollar reserves, $30 billion. Official exchange rate, 197 Naira to a dollar. Again, if it's going by dollar reserves, you will expect that if we are still at $30 billion dollar reserves in 2017, we'll have the same exchange rate. But that didn't happen. Same dollar reserves, different period, different exchange rates. Again, the dollar reserves are not the only factor creating the depreciation of the Naira. June 2006, dollar reserves, $33 billion. The foreign exchange, 128 Naira to a dollar officially. Our dollar reserves is back to $33 billion, but the exchange rate is not 128 Naira. And the point I'm making is, over time, we have believed that the dollar reserves was the real McCoy to protecting the Naira. But the evidence shows that it goes beyond dollar reserves. The evidence shows that there are several factors that leads to the currency getting weaker or stronger. And one major thing is the central bank and the federal government has to come clear. Does the nation intentionally want to have a weaker Naira, or do we deliberately want to have a stronger Naira? A weaker Naira, if it is well managed, yes, allows our imports to grow better. A stronger Naira has its consequences. But the evidence shows that in the last 3 decades, we have not come clear on what path do we want to follow. Do we want to follow a weaker Naira and deliberately justify it, or do we want to go with a stronger Naira? At the moment, what has been happening is that we seem to be sitting on the fence.
But what should be the next move by the CBN now going forward?
The CBN, first of all, has to understand that, yes, we have a new governor of the central bank who seems to have a path to being able to stabilize things, but that isn't sufficient. The CBN needs to know that the stability or otherwise of the Naira is not solely dependent on what the CBN does. There are several other factors beyond the CBN that the government needs to be concerned about. If there are three words I'll talk about, incentive to produce. The central bank, more than ever before, has to give businesses incentives to produce. Here's what I mean. 2015, when this policy happened, total trade of the country, 16 trillion naira, 41% of that was import dependent. In other words, we imported 41% of that total trade value. One of the things the policy wanted to achieve was to increase imports. But let's look at what has happened over time, especially in the last 3 years. 2020, our import ratio shot up to 61%. 2021, 60%. And last year, even worse than what it was in 2015. In other words, and one major thing that has led to the stability and instability of the Naira is that we are importing much more than we have ever done. Our import value is not only going up, our import volumes are going up. So three words that should be on the mind of the CBN and of the mind of other stakeholders going forward is that incentive to produce. If we do not improve on our productivity per capita, the Naira will keep getting weaker. The words incentive to produce.
All right, so incentive to produce, that's the last line. Thank you very much.
And I'm giving you an incentive to run away now.
Okay, Babajide Ogunsawo, founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television Data Analyst. Thanks a lot for your contribution, as always, on the News at 10. Let's head to politics now. Governor Yahaya Bello of Kogi State has called on the people of Kogi West Senatorial District to join hands with the All Progressives Congress to form a government that will meet their yearnings and aspirations. The governor made the call during the zonal campaign of the party in Kaba ahead of the governorship election on November the 11th. Governor Bello notes that his achievements in the area and wants them to reciprocate by voting for the party's governorship candidates, Mr. Ododo Usman.
The campaign train of the All Progressives Congress in Kogi State is in Kaba, the headquarters of the Kogi West Senatorial District, to woo electorates ahead of the November 11 governorship election. Governor Yahaya Bello, the governorship candidate, Mr. Usman Ododo, and his deputy, Mr. Joel Oyibo, arrived at the St. Augustine College playing ground amidst cheers from party supporters. Kaba is also the major town for the Okun-speaking tribe in the state, and the people declare their support for the party's candidate.
We, the people of Kogi West, are absolutely united and resolved to make sure that we deliver you.
The Minister of Steel Development, who is the Director General of the Campaign Council, is confident of the party's chances at the poll.
I urge all of you to help us deliver decisive victory. We want 100% of your votes for our party and our incoming candidate, our incoming governor of Kogi State, Alhaji Ahmed Usman Ododo.
The governorship candidate is promising to consolidate on the achievement of Governor Bello.
We are coming to consolidate and improve on the achievement of His Excellency, as I've said last time, in the area of security, in the area of social equality, in the area of agriculture, in the area of human capital development, such as women and youth empowerment.
Governor Bello then handed over the party flag to the candidate. He also received some campaigns from other political parties.
Your Excellency.
And later, Governor Bello displays his dancing skills. The governor wants the security agencies in the state to provide adequate security during the election to enable the people vote under a peaceful atmosphere.
We have no doubt about victory. It is going to be a landslide victory. We are expecting a number that is more than over 400 that I scored in 2019. I want to appreciate all of you. Be vigilant, because they are threatening violence. But you know what? They have failed. We that are winning, we are not violent.
The campaign team earlier visited the Obaro of Kaba, His Royal Majesty Oba Solomon Dele Owoniyi, who assured them of the continued support of traditional rulers for the state government.
And staying with Kogi State, the African Democratic Congress is reiterating its commitment to engage in the development of infrastructure across all levels in the state. Speaking in Adavi and Okehi local government areas of the state, the candidate of the party, Mr. Leke Abejide, says the addition to developing infrastructure in the state, his administration, if voted into office, will promote local government autonomy in order to bring government closer to the people.
The campaign train of the African Democratic Congress is making stops in more local government areas of Kogi State. The train stopped in Adavi local government area, where the party's candidate holds a town hall meeting with stakeholders. With a view to change the fortunes of the state, the ADC candidate reels out his agenda, while his wife makes an appeal to women in the state.
I believe in stomach infrastructure. And I believe in physical infrastructure. I will ensure if Adavi is to get 200 million, the 200 million will come to that local government chairman. If Okehi is to get 200 million, the 200 million will come to Okehi.
Women, let's tie our wrappers very well and come out to vote for the right person. This suffering, we have been suffering a long time ago. We don't want to continue in this suffering.
The coordinator of the party in Kogi Central decries the payment of salaries in percentages in the state.
Do you know that this government, some months they pay 30%, some months they pay 25%, some months they don't even pay.
At the campaign ground, the ADC candidate and his deputy urged the people to vote for the party in order to ensure employment for all youths and artisans.
Those of you with good certificates, we will place you in good places. The artisans, those who didn't go to school but they learn work, we will make sure we support your trade so that you can grow in your businesses.
Our government, by the special grace of God and by your effort, will be a government that is very inclusive, both for the private sector and for the public sector.
From Adavi, the campaign train heads Okei local government area, where the ADC candidate promises to ensure infrastructure development in the area.
The race to produce the next governor of Edo State is on as political parties step up their preparations ahead of next year's governorship election in the state. The governor, Godwin Obaseki, and his party is asking that the unity of the state should be made paramount and not who will succeed him in office when the time comes. Well, Mr. Obaseki was speaking during a church Thanksgiving service in Benin City, the state capital.
The unity of Edo is our greatest strength. So the church must join us to pray that in whatever we are doing, we must make sure that Edo is one. That every part of Edo feel that they are in Edo. And it's important, even in my succession, that we must first understand that without unity, we cannot be strong. So fairness, justice, equity are some of the things that must guide our decision making in Edo State as we think of leadership.
And still talking politics, Governor Obasani of Kaduna State and the candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the 2023 governorship election has filed a cross appeal at the Court of Appeal sitting in the state capital, asking it to reverse the controversial alternative ruling of the Governorship Election Tribunal ordering supplementary election in the state. Despite emerging victorious from the main ruling of the tribunal, delivered on September the 28th, the governor is contesting the alternative majority ruling of 2-1, which created a path for the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Asa Ashiru, to claim victory. Also, in his appeal filed to the Court of Appeal, Mr. Ashiru provided 24 grounds to upturn the dismissal of his petition. He's also seeking an order to a higher court to invalidate Governor Sani's victory. The cross appeal was filed by Governor Sani's legal team, led by a former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Chief Bayo Ojo. According to Mr. Ojo, the tribunal threw the political space into a spin when in double majority decisions dismissed Mr. Ashiru's petition for fatal non-compliance with the regulating laws before proceeding to give an alternative ruling favoring the petitioners. Away from politics now, some residents in Oyibo community, a local government area in Oyibo local government area in Rivers State, have been displaced with massive flood, which has also affected their livelihood. According to authorities, about 1,000 residents are homeless, farmlands taking over, houses submerged, and livestock lost to the flooding. Our correspondent Deborah Agbalama reports.
What you see here used to be a normal street, an access road to different points, but it's all history until this flood can fully dry up. It's not just happening here alone, it's happening in about 5 communities right here in Oyibo River State.
Oyibo local government area ranks amongst the most populated council areas in Rivers State. But arriving these affected communities, the place is almost completely deserted due to the flooding. The affected communities are Umodino, Umobiri, Umokochito, Umokolobo, and Umowari, all in Oyibo West Rivers State. We set out to their camp. Life here seems okay. Their shelter looks renovated and habitable. However, nowhere else feels like home, according to some of the campers.
My seats, my foam, everything. Imagine fridge being covered, yes, by the water in the house. So we just managed to escape by running away, and we found ourselves here.
We are managing up because everyone is managing, because government, they are trying their best. Only it's not easy.
We couldn't even recover anything. We entered our house. It was the grace of God that made me to even bring out only my son's school bag.
From the huge impact of this flooding, it is difficult to tell when the water will recede, as residents say they presently live with this uncertainty, with most of their business activities put on hold.
As you go now, this is graceland by the...
Some officials of the Oyibo Council who cater for the flood victims at the IDP camp say there are presently over 200 taking refuge, and the number increases with every ticking hour.
The flood just came to us as a surprise because we thought that by this time the flood will not come again. But surprisingly, the flood came with big speed.
More than 200 persons have been affected. They are both with their children and all that. In fact, the thing is a very big issue. We are begging the local government has tried at its own strength.
The chairman of Oyibo local government area, Okechukwu Akara, explains some of the actions taken so far by the government.
Meetings, we agreed that we are going to approach the problem in 3 phases. We swung into action and started preparing. We are done, and also we are done with the first phase. The second phase is what we are facing now. The flood finally has arrived. State government assisted us to fix the place. We've started moving our people, displaced persons, to the camp, and then we will not allow them to suffer. We're trying our best as a government.
The task ahead is enormous. The channeling off of the flood, the resettling of residents who seem to have nothing to go back to, and finding a lasting solution to the flood disaster in the area.
Deborah Abalama, Channels Television News.
The troops of Operation Hadirin-Daji in Zamfara State have rescued 4 kidnapped students of the Federal University Gusau who were abducted by terrorists on Saturday from their off-campus residence in Damba area in Zamfara State. The spokesperson of 1 Brigade Nigerian Army Gusau, Captain Yahya Ibrahim, says the troops responded swiftly to a distress call on the kidnapped students by mobilizing and forming blockades at a possible withdrawal route, which led to a heavy gun battle with the terrorists and an eventual rescue of the students. The terrorists had late Saturday evening invaded Damba community in Gusau local government area, abducting 2 students of the Federal University Gusau in the off-campus in Garindaba, the state capital. Let's head to Enugu State now, where the Governor Peter Mba has flagged off the construction of the new Enugu city that will host 3 islands and some smart city features. According to Governor Mba, the new city, which will sit at 10,000 hectares of land, traverses Enugu East, North, South, and Nkanu West local government areas. It will be delivered in 24 months in line with his administration's determination to restore the state's glory. The governor of Enugu State, Peter Mba, in company of some state government officials, is at the venue of the proposed new Enugu city along the Enugu-Abakaliki Road in Enugu East local government area. This means happy days lie ahead for the people with the siting of the project on 10,000 hectares of land, including an innovation park in the west and a happy island in the east. The Commissioner for Work says the ministry will be hands-on to deliver the project.
We are going to do everything with these contractors and monitoring them in our every capacity to deliver high-quality infrastructure here.
The contractor promises to deliver nothing short of high-standard projects.
We are committed to minimizing disruption and ensure open lines of communication through this journey. Your support and understanding are essential to our shared success. The completion of this road will facilitate the traffic of Enugu New City.
Governor Mba explains that the ambitious project, which will come in phases, is expected to be laced with everything that defines a smart city.
This 26 square kilometers, you can see, will warehouse 3 precincts. One is the Happy Island, the Vitality Bay, and the Innovation Park. All of these islands are designed with first-class city features in mind. All the things that we experience when we travel overseas, whether to Dubai, to Singapore, to other major cities in the world, that is what we're about to bring to you here.
The governor also appealed to the people of the area to adopt the project as theirs, giving the long-term benefit.
Cooperate with the contractors as they go in to do their work. This is for us. This is the benefit of NDLEA. This is for you, your benefit. We must do everything to ensure that this project comes to fruition.
As the people look forward to a smart city as promised, they also want the government to pay equal attention to other sectors like education and healthcare for an overall improvement of the living standard of the residents. Operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, have arrested Hakim Babatunde Salami and Sulaiman Babatunde Oba, 2 wanted heads of a transnational criminal organization estimated to have multi-billion naira worth of illicit drugs and assets following weeks of intelligence-led operations. This arrest follows the seizure of cocaine and heroin consignment buried in the bellies of 2 traffickers heading to Paris and in Doha, Qatar at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. Officials of the NDLEA at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Ikeja, have also arrested the head of another transnational criminal organization involved in the illicit trade of several narcotics between Nigeria, Brazil, Ghana, South Africa, Mozambique, and Europe. The head of another cartel, Okafor Ikechukwu Williams, and his wife, Okafor Ifenyinwa Grace, were also taken into custody at the Agor area of Lagos with 27.5 kilograms of methamphetamine concealed in sacks ready for export to Europe and Asia. There were recovered items from them. Meanwhile, NDLEA operatives on patrol along Okene-Lokoja-Abuja Expressway have covered $4,880,000 US and 57 million safer. That's about 57 million expected to be counterfeits. In the world of sports, Sunday's match day 3 games of the Nigeria Premier Football League, also played across the country this evening, recorded a total of 15 goals. Defending champions Enyimba defeated Akwa United 3-2 in a thrilling contest in Aba. Right here in Lagos, Sporting Lagos, who were top on the league table after 2 games, were forced to a goalless draw by visiting Doma United. Remo Stars recorded the only away win of the day, beating Bayelsa United 2-1 in Enugu. Former champions Rivers United were held to a 0-0 draw by Kwara United at the Dokie Amasiamaka Stadium in Port Harcourt. At the Lake Salami Stadium in Adamasingba, Ibadan, Shooting Stars recorded the second win of the season, edging past Gombe United with 2-1. Super Eagles forwards Victor Osimhen and Kelechi Iheanacho have been excused from the team camp in Portugal ahead of tomorrow's friendly against Mozambique. Osimhen left camp as a precautionary measure on the advice of the medical team of the Super Eagles after sustaining injury in the 2-2 draw against Saudi Arabia on Friday. Iheanacho, who got the second goal for Nigeria in that draw, was excused to attend to pressing personal issues. While Nigeria and Mozambique have now met 4 times in previous encounters, with the Super Eagles winning 3 and drawing 1. The United Nations has talked about the war in the Gaza Strip and saying that it has pushed people into the abyss.
It's Sunday, a week after the Hamas attacks on Israel and the Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, and a few days since Israel announced it is cutting food, fuel and water from the Gaza Strip. But on Sunday, Israel opens the water pipes into Gaza. Residents queue for water in Khan Yunis at water distribution stations. Israel's energy minister said the decision to renew water supplies to parts of southern Gaza was agreed on between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Joe Biden. Hours before, Mr. Netanyahu vowed to demolish Hamas as his military prepares to move into the Gaza Strip in search of Islamist militants whose deadly rampage through Israeli border towns shocked the world. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Israel has no interest in waging war on its northern front, and that if the Lebanese group Hezbollah restrains itself, Israel would respect the situation along the border as it is today. He says sporadic fire across the Israeli-Lebanon border over the past week has raised concerns that fighting with Hamas militants in Gaza could escalate into a broader conflict. Meanwhile, several people were feared dead after an Israeli airstrike on a building in Gaza's Al-Shati refugee camp, as civil defense forces and residents worked on finding survivors. The Palestinian Health Ministry said early on Sunday that 300 people, mostly children and women, had been killed, and 800 more had been injured in Gaza during the last 24 hours. And the main news again.
The Vice President Kashim Shettima has departed Abuja for Beijing, China to represent President Bola Tinubu at the Belt and Road Initiative Forum. The Vice President will, from China, move to the United States, where he will deliver the keynote address at the Norman A. Bola International Dialogue. And the United Nations has said that Gaza is being pushed to abyss as Israel prepares for ground offensive amid soaring humanitarian crisis. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Have a wonderful week ahead. Good night.